Welcome to Podcast of All Podcasts. Enjoy best moments of podcast history. Aesop Rock.
Give him one of these pills if he has any pain.
A parable. What is it? Well, it's a little story with a lot of truth in it. An earthly story with a heavenly meaning. Jesus told many parables to grown-ups and children alike. He told them simply and sincerely, in words everyone could understand, so that all might learn the lesson he was trying to teach.
They were selfish with the helmets on the little bus. To break fluid, sewage crippled up to get retorted nickel punks. Slowly culprits for his lowly robot bully woke would one day rise in sections to interrogate the Holy Ghost.
Holy smokes, father, black suit, white collar, kitty corn, dungeon guns, and 3 fingers for your daughters. Squat belly up, antique Nazi paraphernalia. You cannot pay your bills with holy water and Hail Mary luck. Shucks, fucker, enjoy the Alcatraz shower fun. And mommy's Madam Cliche Generation X agnostic front. It ain't the nifty faith in 1958 before the New Testament approved altar boy fisting rape. And take me to you later, long as they don't manipulate toddler beaver. Call me crazy, but I bet that wasn't God's demeanor. Sodometer peeking, but Long Island was Jesus every weekend. Spoon-fed to appease traditional upbringing of a middle Pennsylvania shithole where elders movement stressed a stellar therapeutic Bible cycle. One church with a bait and tackle store next door and not much more. So the two moved to New York, made babies raised on what they'd saw. Christmas morning smelled fresher than angel pussy, but Immaculate Conception came second to playful goodies. Like laser tag was way more spiritual than blood and body wafer bags and manger staff as long as Santa ate the cookies. Grandma was a saint, well he'd paint with snakes and bullies. Said if only you'd memorize your prayers like you did your Cool G. See, by the time I was old enough to know what religion was, I was Catholicism numb and truly didn't give a fuck. 94, moved out the crib and ain't seen a steeple since. What Knievel evil seeps in the Christian leader's pitch. Till priest slap with parental advisory warnings. I'll be auditioning gods in my office on Monday morning. Uh-oh, and yet another bill. Slip down the hatch, you patch him through the kill. Switch. Couple A's for Q's. I'm not an asshole, I'm just a little confused.
This story reminds us of the one Jesus told about people who were kind and helpful to others. He said that one day the king would say to these people, "Come, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. For when I was hungry, you gave me food. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." But the people asked, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or sick, or in prison, and come to you?" And the king answered, "Inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me."
Yeah.
Just a little bruise in the back of the pews, acting amused with a mask on them Vatican blues. For in the eyes of the organization, I was raised in Ace, just another sinning brick in hell's basement. Cubicle adjacent to the killers and rapists. For what? Drugs and fucking is part of growing up. Like cups of a dumb shit's better than the schools. I'm not an asshole, I'm just a little confused. Just a lit fuse in the back of the pews, watching 1,000 flavors of the same God feud. I figure ultimate peace is the common theme, so it's a no-brainer piece when the blood hit the screen. I got a basic good and evil sensibility born. Good neighbor, know a halo wouldn't fit over horns. I'm more science than faith, I'm more karma than bread and booze. I'm not an asshole, I'm just a little confused. Not an asshole, I'm just a little confused. Not an asshole, I'm just a little confused. Not an asshole, I'm just a little confused.
You know what? To be completely honest, Aesop, you're a fucking asshole.
Tim Ferriss with Vince Vaughn.
More than I lost, even with him being challenging in a lot of ways, I wouldn't change that experience. And you can have a great coach, which there are in wrestling, and I think in general, one of the great attributes of wrestling is constitution and grit, the ability to survive painful moments and not take them on in the absolute sense, meaning to have perspective on pain.
Well, I want to touch on the word grit for a second because there are many researchers who have looked at grit and written about it, Angela Duckworth being one of them. There are many others. And also, for instance, I think it's Carol Dweck who wrote a book called Mindset. And she talks about the sort of intrinsic versus extrinsic validation in kids. And so you're talking about your dad focusing on process. And I think that helps you to develop grit, right? Because you don't assume you're a failure if you have an isolated, say, failure on the mat, as long as you're putting in the process that allows you to persist, which I think relates to a lot of your career. But I want to talk about maybe not the beginning of your career because it's different, but shitty jobs when you were young. Because one other person I've had, for instance, on the podcast, Chris Sacca, who I've watched go from having a tough time affording a place in Truckee, which is like a mountain cabin, to being on the cover of the Forbes Midas issue. Right? He's now a well-known billionaire investor. And one of his criteria for evaluating people to invest in is, have they had shitty jobs or not? Like, he likes to see people who have had shitty service jobs. So I was a busboy and got abused on Long Island for a long time. Do any particular jobs come to mind?
I had a few of them younger in service industry and that, but the one that was, I changed perspective on as I got older was, it seemed great at the time, but I've shared it before, but was the telemarketing job. I was old enough to drive a car. I was 16. It was the summertime, and we were always encouraged, to work. And so I got a job. I thought it was a great job because I sat behind this desk and I would read this, form and insert names, and I'd kind of make it my own. And I like competition, and it felt as such than that we would all be in a room together. And it was an odd setup looking back. It was a guy, anyone 15 years older than you seems old. That's just how life is. So he felt old to me, although he was probably younger than I am now. But he had a much younger girlfriend, and she would bring him soup, and they'd sit in the back office. It was an odd arrangement. But we would sit at this table, and we would sell, and the name would be on the board. Now, what we were selling was the point that came in question years later, because it was a nondescript building in Waukegan, Illinois, referred to as Waukeezy, Illinois. But we were selling tickets to the Lake County Sheriff's Police Rodeo. So the fact that the police were throwing a rodeo would really have one suggest it was an authentic thing, because the police are throwing a rodeo, right? I don't know if the police even knew about the damn rodeo. And there was a family package that was $20, which got you 4. And then there was an orphan. Would you like to send an orphan? I mean, who doesn't want to send an orphan to an event? It was a time when the rodeo wasn't questioned, the treatment of anything like that. So I was very good at selling orphans. So I'd say to the family, and my family's not going to make it. I said, but would you like an orphan to go? For $5, you can give an orphan a chance to go. Well, I don't know how many orphans there were in Lake County, but thousands of them could have gone. So I was feeling great, like I'm selling these tickets to the rodeo, to the sheriff's rodeo, in a nondescript building in Illinois. But I got good at calling people, make them laugh, connect to them in some way, and then emotionally hit them up for the orphans if they said no to the other package. And that was an interesting one, because years later, at 16, I took it at face value. And years later, I evaluated, in those moments when your mind wanders, I started to question, was there ever a rodeo, and who were these orphans? And maybe I was taking money from people on a fixed income, and that didn't feel good,
What was... So the boiler room, sort of JT Marlin aspect aside, do you remember any of the script that you had to read? Or any?
So home. I'm Vince Vaughn calling from Lake County Sheriff's Police Rodeo. And it was something along the lines of, police are throwing a rodeo in celebration of this. The families, no, I can't make a family packages for it. But would you like to send an orphan? For just $5, an orphan can go and enjoy the after. As if like some orphans were going to come out and the other ones had to stay inside the place. It's concept, it's crazy that you didn't evaluate. But I remember seeing it as a competition, and I did very well. I think I won tickets to Madonna or something for selling out. But anyway, we were sitting outside, and every week there was a turnover, so the bottom 20% would go, and there'd be a new 20%. And some of the people doing the job were older than I was, and I was kind of excited, and there was a little bit of the factory mentality of people who weren't so happy or excited, and I learned that they had a different perspective, because they were like the job really meant something to them, and they didn't want to be in the bottom 20% of the board. And then I saw kind of the, turning on each other and that kind of side of things as well.
Third place, a set of steak knives.
Yeah, that's right.
Fourth place, you're fucking fired.
That's right.
Yeah, one of those situations.
That's right.
I don't know if you knew this. My first job out of college was smiling and dialing. I had to sell via the phone in Silicon Valley, these big data storage systems, and my seat was stuck in the fire exit. I couldn't even back my chair out. They're like, no, that's your office.
What was your pitch?
What was that?
What was your pitch?
Oh, the pitch. Well, my pitch was a little bit different, although because we didn't have orphans, that definitely sweetens the deal. But it was really doing my homework on the front end because I had to try to guess of selling to CTOs and CEOs, these large data storage systems, to places like American Airlines or National Geographic Survey. I think that's the acronym. And massive at the time was like 100 gigabytes. Oh my God, you can buy it for $50 or $100 at Fry's now. But I would ask them, I'd say, I read about you. I'm calling out of left field. You don't know who I am. I'm not going to try to make up a story, but I read an article in IT News Monthly about how you did A, B, and C, and I found it fascinating. I know you're probably busy, but I was wondering, I assume you're using like a Solaris system for your A, B, and C. And if I'd done my homework, they'd be like, I am. That's a good guess. And then I'd say, look, I have to run to a meeting. Of course I didn't have a meeting. I'd be like, I have to run to a meeting or something like that. I would love to just send you a quick email. You can feel free to ignore it if you're too busy, but I'm working with a startup. I think some of the technology could be a really good fit for you. And
Pickup artist.
Yeah, the pickup artist approach to selling
sales.
CTOs.
Yeah.
I was picking up CTOs.
I'm really busy, but
Yeah, exactly. False time constraint. No, yes, no. And we're going to talk about your phone calls a bit more soon. But
now, did you really believe in what you were selling?
I did. Yeah, and I did. There came a point later where I didn't, towards the tail end, where I realized, wait a second, like we're promising things, like the sales team is promising things. My friends were mostly in the engineering group because I had to understand the tech to sell the way that I wanted to sell. And then a lot of the folks on the sales team were selling stuff that had been promised from the higher ups that the engineers were saying they couldn't deliver. And I said, wait a second. In tech, that's called vaporware. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not okay selling vaporware. That's not good at all. And that's when I started starting my own thing.
Sure.
Because I just didn't feel good about it.
Sure.
Is it true that you became class president because you were academically disinclined, but felt that they would have to graduate you if you were class president?
There's a lot of truth in that statement. Disinclined might be a strong verbiage, but at a young age, I developed a real problem with central one way of doing anything, and I found myself in conflict with it my entire academic, we want to call it a career. So. Yeah, I didn't put a real value. I always try to think for myself. And so there were some teachers who I quite enjoyed and would get a lot out of it. And there was others that I just really didn't engage with. And I, for some reason, gave myself permission to speak my mind. I was always, I think, empathetic in that I had a lot of different experiences and friends with different groups, and I was on all sides of it. So I got along with everybody, and I was very bored with school. I didn't enjoy it. I had younger, when I was very young, I did well on an IQ test, and yet I was not paying attention. I just was bored. And I remember they took me to a psychiatrist. They said, "Oh, we think he might have learning disabilities." And I was really afraid. And at the time, I didn't vocalize it, but I was maybe 6. But I thought that at the other side of this, there was a fear that they could take me from my family. So I remember like overly talking in a way that I was an expert on everything I was saying and that I knew the answers to things. And for whatever reason, in my young mind, I felt like I had to really nail this or they were going to take me away. And it came back that I was borderline hyperactive. But that's most young boys, I think, like you can't sit still, you're not listening. And so I had that kind of thing in me. So I always loved to read and I always loved to learn. And I just didn't like the process of memorizing and taking tests. I never enjoyed it. And I didn't enjoy stuff that I found to be ineffective. And I felt ethically challenged with playing the game, as if like, if I didn't believe something, why am I writing it? Should I not be investigating a principle that's sound? Why am I catering to an individual who isn't presenting a good argument, and why would I just, try to get their approval and play the game versus really investigate it, which would lead to confrontations. And I got in a lot of trouble. I would cut school and those kinds of things as well. And so ultimately, yes, I was nervous. I had to graduate high school. My parents said, you got to graduate high school. And it was less, it was more about there were certain requirements I didn't meet. I hadn't taken enough years of math or foreign language wasn't interesting the way they were teaching foreign language. I didn't like that. They were saying te gusta for 3 years and no one could speak damn Spanish. So I just didn't enjoy the process of it. So I thought if I'm senior class president, the senior class president will speak at graduation. And I was very opposed to anything class presidency. I didn't like, for whatever reason, I didn't like that kind of thing. It was not, most kids who were running for student counselor thought this is going to look great on my application to an Ivy League school. And I don't know why, but that kind of bothered me. So anyway, I thought I got to do this because I got to give a speech and they'll have to pass me. My senior year, I couldn't miss any classes. If they didn't pass me, I would not have graduated. And the idea of not moving to California and pursuing what I wanted to do, which I knew, and the idea of having to go to summer school was a real concern of mine. So I did run for class president, and I did win class president. In doing so, I did get better grades my senior year, and I think some of it was perception. Interestingly enough, because I was the class president, I found my grades to improve with very little effort.
Well, you don't want to be the one teacher who ends up flunking
the class president. Yeah. But
it's like a prisoner's dilemma with the other teachers. Yeah.
It's interesting to look back at your rationale, right? It was like, oh, this would position me in a way that would checkmate having to pass these classes.
Worked perfectly.
Yeah.
When did Del Close enter the picture, and could you describe for people who that is?
Well, I knew that I enjoyed acting, and so I lived close to Chicago, which was a great place for training because it wasn't as if you were going to be on stage and go to a pilot or a better professional opportunity. It was really just about the training. So that was excellent. I took a workshop, I think it was called the Actors Center, Shakespeare and dance, and I met a gentleman in that said, you'd be very good at improv. You might like improv, and I'm a member of a group called the Improv Olympic. And I knew of Second City. And I said, I thought maybe I'd go take classes at Second City. He said, well, this guy, Del Close, who started Second City, has since left. He felt that it's become more written sketch-oriented. And he started this thing called the Herald, in which it's true improvisation. You learn a set of skills. You'll take suggestions from the audience. And you will incorporate the games that you play and hopefully create a linear story structure that has an ending where the things that are set up in the beginning pay off. And so I wasn't old enough to be in these bars, but they put me on stage very quickly. It was a woman, I think she still runs it, named Sharna. They were very nice to me. I went down, and maybe after 2 or 3 weeks, they put me on stage and I started performing. And it was really a writer's workshop. A lot of great writers have come out of that same system because you're seeing others do it. You're having to think ahead of how you're going to match this up. And so he was a very interesting guy. I had taken a few classes with him. I didn't get to know him intimately, but he would always say there's nothing funny about comedy. And, the stories you hear about him kind of, being intense about it was very true. But it was great exposure at a young age to be given the permission to actually perform and to do it live in front of an audience.
Is it true? I read that on the first day of classes he gave, he would say there's nothing fucking funny about comedy.
Yeah.
To the students. Or does that sound like something that he would
No,
say?
he did. He would say that. And I wasn't with him as much. He would come in and there was classes I took with him, but it was an interesting point of view that you're not there to yuck it up and signal to people that we're having fun. The comedy on some level can be an overcommitment to the absurd. So something that is an extreme point of view and your absolute commitment to that could be comedic, right? So I like that as a foundation on some level, that you were taking things seriously to some degree or putting your weight behind it, if you would.
And what separated, when you were watching, whether it's fellow students or people who were more advanced, the good improv people from the great improv people?
Well, there's different body types, and there's different energies. Well, I mean that in the way of some people, you know this in life too, right? Like Jackie Gleason had this, or Farley had it. And I don't mean about size, it's just a presence. And then others are more intellectualized or, thought out. So there's more than one way to the waterfall. There's not one size fits all. And you may, you could draw from, I think one of the great ways to learn is watching others. You don't learn from being isolated. You really only learn from watching others and then application. And by doing it, you can't learn. I think, in fact, it's impossible to learn from just writing down what someone else is saying. So it was great in the live sense to draw from others and to take from them. But I didn't see it much different than method acting, and that ultimately was about listening. You had to be present in the moment for what the other person was providing, because if you responded without hearing it, it killed the commitment from the audience to believe it. So if you said, I'm an astronaut, one of the first lessons is yes, and. So I would accept what you do and add to it. But if you say we're astronauts and I say, no, we're not, we're cowboys, then the audience is now disengaged because there's no believability. But if you say we're astronauts and I say yes, and we also train horses, how are we going to do this? I've continued the creation of the imagination. So in collaborating, I think listening is paramount, because you want to be working together to create a reality.
So let's talk about listening to yourself, and this relates to moving west. So you've done talent shows. You had I understand it, a national commercial spot with Chevrolet.
That's right.
And thank God you were tall enough to be put on stage so they wouldn't get arrested immediately if you'd been, a little guy like me. And how did you decide to go west? Because, for instance, I've heard different trains of thought related to this. I remember hearing a very well-known stand-up comedian say to another stand-up comedian who was just getting started, don't move to New York or LA until you're good. Like, those are the big leagues. That's where you're going to have people in the audience who matter. Like, get good in the hometown and these following places, and then move to the big city. Mm-hmm. You went from what you were doing in Chicago and then moved west. What was the internal conversation like? How did you think through that?
There was a different mindset at the time, I think, in general with young actors, and that, I don't know that I ever thought I would make a lot of money doing it, or I didn't define success as like, make a lot of money or star in a movie and make it. To me, it was more, I really loved enjoying this. If I could be good in a scene, I'd like that. And if I could get a chance to, there was nothing in my mind's eye that was separate, meaning a commercial or a television show, anything that would be performing and making a living doing it felt like a good idea.
Dax Shepard with Sarah Silverman.
When I was 19 in New York, I remember walking by construction workers and getting catcalled and looking back at them like, and the guy saw me look back and went, not you. And I realized they were talking about me. And it was very humbling. All of a sudden I was like sad it wasn't me.
Sure.
So now I'm much older and self-possessed, and I'm just a different, my commodity isn't necessarily sex.
Did you have like a wake for that? I think you're wrong about that evaluation, but that's fine.
I really but so now if I'm judged by my looks, it's such a treat, and it's so. And if a guy cat called me, I would be like, me? You are so sweet.
So romantic.
He wants his tongue on my asshole. Is like. That makes me almost cry from being moved.
Yeah, he doesn't even know if you've showered. He's just trusting that you're clean.
The first penis I ever saw was my boss at a restaurant I worked at. At
a taco restaurant,
yeah. And he wouldn't have done that to me now.
Right.
They have an innate instinct of what they can get away with and with whom they can get away with. This is something where I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone about it for so many years, and I can't figure out why. But he must have known, at least innately, why.
Yeah.
Because, gosh, if he had done it 5 years later, I would have been vocal about it.
Yes, you would have shamed him dramatically, probably.
Yeah, and I certainly wouldn't have internalized that shame. And so, I mean, it's very interesting what we innately know as humans, what he innately knew, what I did as a kid as being like the Jewish kid, or like all those things that we don't know why we know them, and we couldn't articulate that we know them, but we do.
Yes. Well, I was thinking about this the other day. Monica and I talked about it at length, and I've been trying to think of a way to bring it up on here, but it's so dicey. But I'll just say from my very own experience.
Okay.
So I was molested as a kid, and the guy who did it, the whole reason I was even around this guy repeatedly was he had a go-kart that I really wanted to buy. And he kept saying that he was going to sell me this go-kart for cheap.
Oh, boy.
And so all of the ugliness happens. And for years, first, I don't even tell anyone for years.
Of course.
And there are so many things going on. As a young male, where I grew up, the worst thing you could be on a playground is a girl, but only worse than that was a fag. And so I thought, oh, I'm a homosexual now because I did this thing. Plus I was violent, all these things, right? And I later admitted it to this female friend of mine who'd kind of told me about how she'd been attacked by a guy. And I felt like, God, I got to meet her halfway and be honest about myself. And I told her, and all of a sudden it just started getting easier and easier and easier. But over the years, to talk about. And over the years, what I've come to realize is a big bulk of the shame isn't what he did to me. The big bulk of the shame is that I played a role in it. I wanted something from this person. I was in a situation that I didn't like, and I knew I didn't like it, but I kept going forward because I wanted that thing. And I have to imagine for so many survivors of trauma like that, so much of the thing you can't get over is your own involvement. And you need to, for me, I needed to go, oh yeah, you were 8, dude. You really wanted a go-kart. It's okay. You need to forgive yourself. And then what I was thinking about was almost all of these interactions, barring those where you get tackled in an alley, most of these situations, someone has leverage over someone. And the leverage is you want something from that person, and they've recognized that. And they're going to try to get their devious plan executed using this leverage. And I think all of us carry around the guilt of having been succumb to the leverage people have over us.
She's ambitious. She was being ambitious. Or that, God forbid, you wanted something for yourself.
Yes. And I bet a lot of people, there were bells going off going, I've gotten myself in a dicey situation. I shouldn't be here. And I think, I almost think that's where the bulk of the healing needs to happen, is like you just admitting, I ignored my intuition and I really wanted something. And that's okay. I'm a human, and that's what we do. And it's okay.
And you were still taken advantage of.
Yes.
There was no part of what he did that was okay.
No, absolutely not. But I find that like the real stuff you wrestle with, or I'll just speak for myself. The stuff I wrestle with is my mistakes, not yours. Like, you may have done something to me in the past and I'll be mad about it for 2 weeks, but it's me. When I lay in bed, I think, oh, fuck, I really was mean to that person 12 years ago. I'm just carrying my shit.
Last night when I was falling asleep, I thought of something that I did, a dynamic that I created with a man that if it was the other way around would have been very clearly not okay.
Right.
I'm sure he wouldn't mind if I said his name, but he's a comedian and he did stand up. He writes now. He's very successful. Great guy. And I had such sexual prowess. I was very confident, and he was very kind of shy, and he gave me a ride somewhere, and I was talking very sexually and very explicitly at him, and it felt like power. Mm-hmm. I really was remembering this last night. And I was talking about, sex and orgasms and this and that. And I think there was a part of me that got off on making him uncomfortable. And then he said, well, when I come a lot.
Oh,
and
wow.
It shut me up. And I laughed, but it was, he shut me down. Like, it was brilliant because I was feeling so powerful, and the power was coming from making him uncomfortable, and then he made me uncomfortable, and he did it. I mean, I'm in awe of it.
Yeah.
But
in
if it
poker,
was
we
the,
call that coming over the top on the bet. He you raise, and he was like, oh, yeah, I see that. Now fucking double that raise.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have great cards. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, I was hoping you'd fold at this. Not. But anyway, the point being that I thought, wow, if that was the other way around, we'd be very familiar with what that is and why it's wrong. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I should call Chuck Martin.
Let's get him on the phone. But it's interesting because these things aren't tit for tat because we live in a patriarchy. Right. And so that guy had the confidence to come over the top. He just innately from the society he lives in, he's like, well, I can always fight back.
I guess no, and I mean, like what he said, I am fully supportive of it, and I wish I could remember the things I was saying, but it was right of him.
Yeah,
100%. I was using my power to degrade him in a way. I think
for your own titillation and amusement,
just to as feeling power in this world, I think, not to justify it, but I thought, ooh, or like when everything was happening this year with Me Too and everything, and I thought, oh my God, I walked into the writer's room and I said, Jocelyn, I'm your boss, and I shouldn't have made you look at my pubes. You work for me. That was a situation where maybe, and of course, I said this in front of the whole writer's room, and she was like, "No, it's okay, Sarah."
Oh well.
I was convinced that I have straight pubes. And they didn't believe me.
I wouldn't have believed that.
But then, my friend Chris Romano said it's because it's just from like the day.
Oh, but they just got flattened.
Yeah, but even out of the shower, I mean, there may be a bit of a wave, but
so that's very interesting. If you were to let it grow to its full capacity,
which I feel it's there right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. By the way,
because it's been it's winter and I haven't.
Sure.
It gets cold out.
What happens is I just take the beard trimmer and put it on a 1. But it's at a pretty full capacity.
Now when it's at full length and it's dry, you've gotten on the shower.
Silky.
Yeah, it
is wiry. But I would say it's straight.
I have a mental image in my head. And it's probably wrong. Where's yours come from? I know where mine's from.
Ooh.
Oh, no, I'm just picturing a new image in my head. I don't have a reference point, but I picture it like your hair.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Straight down.
Oh, like lying flat.
Because people think I straighten my hair, I think, because I'm Jewy. But it's pretty straight. I have straight hair.
I wonder if people think that. Do they think that?
But I think
you're just
everyone... Yeah.
They accuse you. Other women accuse you of straightening your hair?
No, but if I'm in like a hair and makeup chair for the first time at a thing, they go, oh, do you straighten your hair? And I go, no, it's not curly.
And I'm not from New York. And I don't drive a Beetle bug.
From Farm Town.
Well, I have an image in my head, and it's from that film I was telling you about the other day, the Kama Sutra. They made a movie, and it was like on Showtime when I was
not a
20.
Porn. A regular movie.
It was a regular movie, but it was definitely a soft-core-ish.
Oh, all right. Now
a ton of nudity and stuff.
Right.
And
Seems like it would be it would show women with full bushes.
Yeah, full bushes, which I love. And it was very long and very straight, which I had never seen.
Interesting.
Straight on Indian girls?
Yes, it was straight on.
No, they straightened that then.
Oh my God, you think they flat ironed their bush?
For sure.
Oh,
For
wow.
sure. They took a hot iron to that.
Well, at any rate, it was sticking straight out, parallel to the floor if she was standing.
Straight out.
So that's what I was picturing for you when you just said it was straight.
No,
straight out.
It just lays flat down.
It's just like, yeah.
Okay, great.
It's like wiry, but not curly, and it's...
Did people corroborate when you showed them at your work? Were they like, oh, you're right?
Jocelyn was like, yeah, and then Glenn... was like, no, mine are like that too. And then she showed me, and hers are like that too.
Oh.
Interesting.
I don't know what this thing is that I guess if out of the shower I like scrunch dried it.
You could get a little crimp.
Sacha Baron Cohen.
It's not easy to get Donald Trump. And no. Probably not.
And
I've already got him. I had him years ago with LEG.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So yeah, we might as well go to that now. you had your initial interaction with Donald Trump was in 2003, I believe, as Ali G. So what do you remember from that experience?
So I'd interviewed, academics, Nobel Prize winners, heads of the United Nations. No one had ever kept us waiting before. He kept us waiting for an hour and a half. And then I remember just before the interview, he shouts, "Get me the mayor!" And I think it was Giuliani at the time.
Of course.
And he starts screaming. I remember him, "Have you fucking And I was really intimidated. I mean, since I've realized that actually it was probably a complete ruse and he was just doing it to intimidate us. Then he comes into the room and there's this very Oxford-educated blonde director that we had. He thought he was the guy interviewing him. And then I got introduced, and I was like, "Easy now, what's up? What's up, my main man? Big up yourself, easy now, respect." And he took, big up the big Don, big up yourself. Wicked, yeah. Toilets made the gold, aye? And he looked at me, and he did not want to sit down with me. And he immediately said, "Let's make this quick." And so he stayed about 8 minutes, which is pretty good because I was talking complete nonsense to him. I was pitching him a business scheme where he would invest $100 million in making ice cream gloves, which you could wear. You could wear when you were eating ice cream, and it would stop the ice cream dripping onto your shirt. What does everyone like? Ice cream.
Yeah,
what does it do? It drips? Wicked. So what is my idea? He goes, non-dripping ice cream? What? That is a fucking brilliant idea. Is that? No, it's the ice cream glove. And basically, during the interview, I asked him, because later on he came out and goes, I was the one person who saw through this. I got out immediately and got out. My question is, if he saw that it was fake, why would he have claimed, as he did, that human beings have been trading in rocks for millions of years? Because I asked him, I go, how long has people been doing business? And he said, well, human beings have been trading in rocks for millions of years. Now, the actual answer is human beings have been trading in salt for somewhere between 3 to 10,000 years. So it was a foolish thing to say. So it seems hard to believe that it was intentional.
And then that led a few years later in Borat. There's a scene where you're defecating in the garden of Trump Tower. Was that kind of?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
Was that a kind of payback for what happened with the original
not a payback.
Interview?
I always knew he'd amount to great things. I always had faith in him. So I thought I should defecate in front of his tower. And then actually in another movie, he ends up contracting HIV as well, which is now completely curable, which is fantastic. So I don't see why he was upset by that.
So speaking of Borat, I actually watched it for probably the 15th or 20th time today before this interview, and it's just as great as ever. And I think, for me and for a lot of people, the hardest time that I've ever laughed in a movie theater is that naked fight scene, which I don't know what it is about it, but it brings out something in people. What do you remember from filming that particular part of the movie?
I've blanked it all out. No, I remember, so basically, I wrote it with a couple of brilliant writers, Peter Bainham and Dan Mays and Ant Hines. And I wrote it with me sitting on his face. And then we got into the room, and we're like, the director, Larry Charles, said, actually, it's funnier if he sits on your face. And I go, no. Is it? Read the script, Larry. In the script, I sit on his face. So anyway, Ken Davician, a fantastic actor, was, he's a big guy. He's a big guy. And so I was scared that I would not be able to breathe underneath because his buttocks were so big. It's like when you kill someone with a pillow. His buttocks were enough to cover my entire face and create a seal around So I had a certain amount of seconds, and I said to Larry Charles, I go, okay, here's the code, which is, if I tap the mattress 3 times, that means I'm out of oxygen, and you pull it, you shout cut, and you rip him off. Anyway, when you see the actual scene, you see me banging 3 times, and they do nothing. And I mentioned this once before, but I did at that point, I realized I had 2 choices. Either I could die, or I could suck the air that had been stuck up by co-star. And in that moment, I chose to die.
So the climax of that movie is the Pamela Anderson kidnapping scene, which there's been a long debate over whether she was in on it or not. So do you want to clear that up for everyone now? Was Pamela Anderson in on that moment?
So she was the only person in on that movie. Yes, she was. I think otherwise it would have been kidnapping.
Right.
And we did that scene twice, actually. The first time we did a book signing, and I grabbed her over my shoulder and ran out with her, and no one did anything. I was like, what kind of fans are these? Like, and so we did it again, and they started running after me. And I turned, and I didn't realize, but she actually clipped her jaw. And she's actually amazingly brave. She lost 2 things. One, she lost a tiny bit of bone from her jaw, so she should really have gotten an award for that. And secondly, she lost her husband. So my wife is... No? Yeah, it's okay. So later on, Kid Rock saw the movie. And I texted Pamela Anderson, and I said, how did it go? What did you think? And she texted back, he's getting divorced. I was like, why? She goes, the movie. And I thought it was a joke, but then a few weeks later they got divorced and they put as a reason for divorce, Borat. So it had some casualties.
Yeah, you can take credit for that too. That's you got Dana Rohrabacher out.
I think they were a fantastic
up,
couple, so it's a shame. Much better than Julian Assange or whoever she dated later on.
Yeah. So you've said that you're not making another season of Who Is America, that you think it might be another decade or so before you could do something like this again. What do you want to do next?
I can't really be bothered to do it. No, I don't know. I mean, the principle has always been to do stuff that I love and that challenges me. And I mean, originally I didn't, when I started off in England, I was from, grew up in northwest London. The idea of coming to Hollywood and making movies was impossible. No one had really ever come here since, sort of Sellers. Hugh Grant had a tiny bit, and then I can't remember what happened to him, something on Hollywood Boulevard. I don't know. We didn't hear about it in England. And so it was an impossibility. So when I started off, the idea was to actually... My dream was to join this theatre group called Theatre de Complicité, who are kind of physical theatre troupes. So the idea of actually making a TV show and then making a movie and then doing stuff that Americans would, or some of them would like, was literally beyond my wildest dreams. We used to have like a 101-year-old South African woman who used to come around our house for Friday night dinner, and she used to, me and my brother used to perform and sing songs. She would say, "You will go to Hollywood one day and they will love you." And we're like, yes, that's right. Right. It seemed completely outlandish. So it's, I don't know really. I mean, something has to take my fancy.
You are playing an Israeli spy, I believe, in an upcoming Netflix.
I'm playing not this Israeli spy. I am playing. Yeah.
In a Netflix miniseries. Is there anything you can share about that project?
I mean, it's completely straight. It's a true story, 6-part about this Egyptian Jew who emigrates to Israel. He's working as an accountant in a supermarket. True story, and the Mossad pick him and to give him a cover as a multimillionaire, and he gets sent into Syria alone and becomes the deputy defense minister. So I thought it was quite an interesting story, and ended up in Morocco for 4 months shooting it.
I'm curious.
There are no jokes in it. Just warning.
Another acting job that you were going to do but didn't end up doing was Freddie Mercury. That was long rumored, and obviously now Rami Malek won the Oscar this past year for that role.
And
I'm
well
curious,
deserved as well. He did a brilliant performance.
Did you get to see it? And how are you feeling about that? That whole thing now.
Well, I'm very glad for Rami, and I talked about this on Howard Stern extensively, so I won't go over it all here. But ultimately, I'm glad for Queen because it was the movie that they wanted to make. It was not the movie that I wanted to make, and so I'm very happy for them that they realized their dream.
Great. So we're gonna read some audience questions. This first one says it's from Dipshit Near the Bathroom. I don't know who wrote that on their card.
Who is Dipshit Near the Bathroom? I don't know why I'm looking at you. Sorry. You're nowhere near the bathroom. I was drawn. Everyone was drawn to you. This guy here.
It worked. So this is about the process of creating new characters, which we kind of touched on. But it also says, who do you trust for notes and feedback when you're creating new characters?
So what is it about? What's the beginning?
Well, it was about creating the process of building characters, which I think we talked about some. But then the other part of it is who do you trust for notes and feedback when you're doing it?
So I'll also go, because you're actors, so what you have to do is obviously create a character and it to be believable. So I think I find it really, really hard, and that might be. I think that's the struggle we all have, and can we pull it off? My way in to a character is firstly through the words. So, it's like they say, if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. If you don't have the words, create the character, in my opinion, and the specificity of those words and the language and the syntax tell you everything about the character. So when I create a character, the first thing I do, and I'm with a couple of people in the room, is we write the funny lines. We're asking questions. Then I actually create a separate document, which is what do those jokes tell us about the character? So for example, with Ali G, there was a line I wrote, when is it legal to murder someone? So we got to laugh with that, and you go, okay, so, oxymorons are amusing for him, and, you create the character through those lines that are amusing. Then there is obviously the accent, and sometimes that was kind of really, really last minute. So I was working with probably the greatest dialect coach in the world, a guy called Tim Monick, who I'd met on the set of Hugo with Martin Scorsese, and he does all Tarantino stuff. He's fantastic. And something like Billy Wayne, the conspiracy theorist, I only managed to get Tim a few hours before going into my first interview. So there's a real person who's waiting there, I have to convince them real. And he say, okay, where do you want him to be from? And I was like, okay, I want him to be from East Tennessee. And then he would teach me, would go through the script, and I'd go through, how exactly to pronounce it, and then just stay in the voice. So obviously it was terrifying because, you're coming into a room and you have to convince them that you are real. And there's the added problem, which is that your face is made of silicon. We actually did one. We did one sketch with. He was called McCutcheon. He took on the Supreme Court. He was the guy took on the Supreme Court to try and have unlimited campaign financing, and I managed to get him to prepare and turn his little office cubicle into a mosque in 30 seconds so he could prepare against any kind of ISIS attackers. And during the interview, it was in a very, very hot room, the cameraman looks at me and he gives me the signal that meant that I had to go out the room. I go out the room And the makeup guy's there, and he goes, I go, what's the problem? And he goes, you have 3 ears. And I look in the mirror, and this ear has become horizontal. So it's become horizontal. You can see 1, 2, 3 ears. And somehow this guy, who was an intelligent man, had not noticed that the man he was talking to had 3 ears. So you have the challenges of physicality. Also, the other challenge with this, which I think is great, is that you want to be able to, we call it, to become sort of locked into a character, which means once I'm in, and you want it to be imperceptible for somebody to see through the character. And it's obviously hard. You've got a silicon face, you're faking everything. And so what I do is I try and learn as much backstory as possible. So, where did you come in? What hotel are you staying at? Tell me about your childhood, your first wife. We had one situation where Vice President Dick Cheney came in, and I was wearing an Israeli army uniform. And I realized about half an hour beforehand, he's going to ask me about my army service. So we had a guy with us we were doing that kindergarten section, and he was a weapons expert, an Israeli weapons expert. He'd done some operations there. And we were carrying around, we had a truck that we were taking around DC with machine guns in and rocket launchers. Actually, at one point we got stopped by the Secret Service about half a mile away from the Congress, and they opened up the back. They saw all the weapons, checked us, and they're like, fine, move on. And so I realized Dick Cheney's coming in. He's an intelligent guy. And so I said to this guy, I go, listen, tell me about your military service. And he goes, what? How much? I go, everything from the beginning. He goes, when I was 7 years old, I went to school. I had a lunchbox in one hand and a gas mask in the other. And that's when I knew I wanted to be a soldier. And he takes me through all his military service for half an hour. Dick Cheney comes in and he says, all right, before we start the interview, who's interviewing me? Sees me. He goes, soldier, come with me. And we sit down and he decides to grill me. And he goes, soldier, tell me about your military service. I go, Vice President Cheney. When I was 7 years old, I went to school.
Jon Stewart.
But look, television journalism was ahead of the game at the Nixon-Kennedy debate. That's when the television medium.
That was a while ago.
Came into, right, I was there, you were there.
Yeah, we were pages.
Came into effect. Basically, Kennedy understood it a little bit rudimentary. He thought, I should probably wear makeup. And Nixon was like, I look great. So he went out there and, everybody thought he had hepatitis, and that was the end of his campaign. Since then, an entire industry has risen up as to how to manipulate and skew that medium to the advantage of the politicians and the powerful. And the industry, rather than in some ways creating a counterweight to that, have been subsumed by it. And so now it's a symbiosis. The media is no longer predator and prey, which I think should be the relationship, but a remora that's just attached underneath, hoping for crumbs that fall off of the shark.
Though they do, I watched Trump with George Stephanopoulos yesterday, who tried to probe, I don't know if you saw the show, but he was probing him on his various proposals, and Trump said, he said, your tax plan would be a windfall for the wealthy. And Trump said, well, it is now, but once we negotiate, it won't be anymore. And just basically shedding all of right. his position. So but he is being challenged.
But it's you're talking about singular anecdotal moments. You're talking about floating logs in a torrent. The relentlessness of the cycle requires an equal counterweight. A counterweight does not mean that occasionally, you push back to a small extent as the waters rush by you everywhere else. That's, I think, where Fox has an advantage, is that they understood that to take over the cycle, you need to be relentless. You need to be perpetuating your point of view and your propaganda in the same way that people consume it, which is constantly and self-reinforcingly and over and over and over again.
Which
and
seems to
unless
be-
you have
which
something
is-
pushing back with that same force, you're not going to have any balance.
Well, the interesting thing about this election, though, you say it's not much different. Trump has basically embraced that tactic. I mean, he is relentless. He is ubiquitous. He is out there all the time.
He's just learned how to. He's just doing judo against them. What works for 24-hour network? What is it incentivized for? It is incentivized for. Here's what you would want it to be incentivized for: clarity. It is incentivized for what? Conflict. The voices that are amplified are the ones that are the most conflict-oriented, the most extreme. Those are the guys that get the airtime. So if they're incentivized for conflict, Trump is not playing this like everybody keeps talking about. He's amazing. He's not. This is the first season of Survivor. This is reality show 101.
Right.
I'm going to be an enormous dick at the beginning of the show to get all this attention, and then once I make it to final counsel, then I'm going to reveal. He's what's the guy's name? Johnny Fairplay. He's Johnny Fairplay. He's the guy who said, "Oh, my grandmother died, and don't vote me out." And then finally, when he got to the final tribal council, that's what he's playing.
What talk to me about Hillary Clinton as an opponent to him, and
I've never run against her, so I don't.
What would you be saying about her if you were doing your show right
What I think about Hillary Clinton is, I imagine to be a very bright woman without the courage of her convictions, because I'm not even sure what they are. So I would suggest that when I watch her campaign, it reminds me of, and again, I'm throwing out references that mean absolutely nothing to anybody, so I will continue to do that. She reminds me of Magic Johnson's talk show. And I won't say anything.
You had that thought too, huh?
If you ever watch Magic Johnson's talk, Magic Johnson was a charming individual, but he wasn't a talk show host. And when you watched his show, you could almost see Arsenio's advice to him in real time rendering. So he would sit and he would go, my first guest tonight. Oh, Arsenio said, enthusiasm is something that my first guest tonight is, share everybody! But it never seemed authentic and real to his personality. It seemed like he was wearing an outfit designed by someone else, for someone else, to be someone else. And that is not to say that she is not preferable to Donald Trump, because at this point, I would vote for Mr. T over Donald Trump. But I think she will be in big trouble if she can't find a way, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a real person doesn't exist underneath there. I don't know.
You dabbled on the government side when you were advocating for the Zadroga Act for 9/11 survivors. Did you work with her when she was senator of New York on that?
No.
So you never
I
had
worked
any...
with Kristen Gillibrand.
Mm-hmm. I see. So she was out of the Senate by then.
She's terrific. Kristen Gillibrand is terrific.
So Hillary was out of the Senate by then. You must have had her on your show.
Yes.
And what was that like?
Really cool. It's, look, there are politicians who are either rendering their inauthenticity in real enough time to appear authentic, and then there are politicians who render their inauthenticity through, it's like when your computer, you want to play, if you have a Mac and you want to play a Microsoft game on it, and there's that weird lag.
Yes.
I
think that's a big problem. There's like a 7-second delay, and all the words come out in a perfectly politically calibrated sentence.
Right. Now, what gives me hope in that is that there's a delay, which means she's somehow fighting something. I've seen politicians who don't have that delay and render their inauthenticity in real time, and that's when you go, that's a sociopath.
That's an uplifting message there.
By the way, as far as uplifting messages, I have never in my life experienced what I experienced in my one day of lobbying down in Washington,
Yeah, I wanna
D.C.
ask you-
And let me just say, like, for however I painted it on the show, it's so much worse than you could possibly imagine. It is a cesspool. There are some good people trying to survive within the lava, but it's a fucking horror show. No disrespect.
No.
There is
Just the fact that you're at the Institute of Politics, where we're trying to encourage young people to get into the
Can
public
I say this?
arena.
Get into it, and don't get it on you. I was down there with firefighters who had spent a year on the smoldering remains of the World Trade Center. The guy that I was with, Ray Pfeiffer, had a titanium rod in his leg that was breaking because of the metastasized cancer that was roiling through it, that he got from being on the pile. We had the scientific evidence with us. You cannot imagine the disrespect, the lack of compassion that was exhibited towards this man and this cause by individuals in higher office. It was, I will never recover from it.
So here's my theory, because I can't sit in front of 1,000 young people and not say this. You know, you have to, if you turn away and you walk away from this and you just cede all of that to the people you're talking about, you're going to get what you get. And it seems to me that there's some obligation to go in there and try and change it. As you say, go in there and don't get it on you.
Yes.
But we need that. We need
No,
that.
but
This is the most
when I say
public
don't get it
spirited
on
group
you,
of-
I don't mean don't engage. I mean take appropriate precautions. Wear a hazmat suit. Bring your ideals. Whenever I speak to, and we used to do this thing every year where we'd bring the press secretaries for all the Senate and all the House people that wanted to come in. And they would say to me, so what can my candidate do to have a successful appearance on your show? And I would say, he could or she could say what she thinks about the issues concerning America.
And they said, is there any other way to do it?
But they would say, but what should I tell them? What works best? When people say what they believe. What's that? Yeah, and honestly, like, I know you think that I'm being hyperbolic. I recognize that you don't understand this. I am not. They are as unaware of their own machinations as you could possibly imagine. And I'm not even saying it's malevolence.
It's the way the game is played.
I assume that it's survival.
But you must have met
It's a
people
cult.
over the course of from '99 to last year doing this show. You must have run across people who were disarming and.
Sure, no, I must have.
Do you want a few seconds to think about that?
Yeah, hold on. There are people that were. What I would get there is the same thing I would get in the news industry, which is people would pull you aside, and they would say, "Yeah, man, it sucks. You're absolutely right. It's terrible down here." And you would just go,
Yeah, but again, I don't want to sit here as the sort of defender of a system that is badly broken.
Right.
But there are people who do make a difference down
Every
there.
day.
You mentioned Kirsten Gillibrand. There are others who actually go there and try.
But the amount of energy that you have to expend. I'll just go along with the 9/11 bill. This is as no-brainer as you can possibly get. This is a horde of zombies would stop their brain-eating rampage to go, yeah, those guys should get some health care. That makes sense.
So run out and find a horde of zombies?
So these guys, for 9 years, had to travel with cancer, with mesothelioma, with low lung function, with heart failure. 9 years of incessant lobbying to move this body, and it only through their lobbying efforts and some measure of public shaming, they relented in the most condescending of ways to finally give into it. If it takes that effort to do something that easy, it is a system that must be, it is self-perpetuating in a way that is dangerous at this point.
You know, I saw, and you were there doing your thing, I saw people cast votes for the Affordable Care Act who lost their positions, people who voted for cap and trade to try and do something about climate change, who lost their positions. And we should, and there are some who didn't, but we should at least acknowledge that there are those people who are willing to do that. I always say Profiles in Courage was a thin volume for a reason, okay? Right. It's not the norm, but it's something that we should...
I guess my point is why in God's name should that be courage? In what world is taking a political stand and trying to affect legislation that should be... And by the way, what's incumbent on those who believe government can make a difference in people's lives is to try and make it more efficient. And I think that's where the Democrats fail in an enormous way, is that in their world, if you believe that government can make a difference in people's lives, well then make the bureaucracy work more efficiently, make the regulations that are strangling, small businesses. Don't just open the Fed window at 0% to corporations. Force them at some level to at least give a percentage of that to small business loans. I mean, and I understand that they are trying, but, and you and your boss and I had a big argument about this, but the VA. If you can do an executive order to kill an American citizen from above with a missile, how can you not do an executive order to reevaluate the DOD and the VA system so that you don't spend $1 billion trying to get 2 computer programs to talk to each other when probably 3 of these idiots could do it for $500? It doesn't wash. Yeah. And at some level, and I'll lay the blame then with the Democrats, the door is open to an asshole like Donald Trump, because the Democrats haven't done enough to show to people that government that can be effective for people can be efficient for people. And if you can't do that, then you've lost the right to make that change, and someone's going to come in and demagogue you. Yeah. And that's what happens.
I don't know, John, that that the people who are following Trump are following him because of efficiency. I think there are other elements. There are elements.
No
I don't
question.
disagree with you. I've always said this, that we ought to be committed to ends and not means, and if the means don't work, then change them. I think that's challenging government is something that Democrats should do. But on the other hand,
let me ask you a question.
On the other hand,
is government too big to manage?
That's a very good question, and I think that what I think happens is we've got a country of 330 million, so government's going to be large. What I think happens is bureaucracy builds on bureaucracy, and it gets encrusted on top of itself. And we, especially in an age of technology, there is an opportunity to do things better and more creatively. And I think that government should do that. But let me say this. Let me just say a word on this, because I think before we're too cynical about this.
This is not cynicism. Don't mistake.
No, but
Don't mistake this for cynicism.
If you talk to one of the 20 million people who have health care today who didn't have health care, they have a pretty positive view of government. If you talk to people who have a Pell Grant, or if you talk to people who are finally, after all these centuries, enjoying their full rights, gay and lesbian Americans and so on, they feel positively that government has been on their side, at least in recent years. So I think that it is a little bit too broad brush to say there's no progress has been made. Nobody has.
I would definitely agree with you if that's what I had said. But that's not what I said.
Okay.
What I said was, and to throw it back the other way, let me say this. Can you imagine how disconcerting it is for someone who's talking about the efficiency of government to talk to the man who basically helped Barack Obama get elected, and you're a powerful guy who has basically been part of the group that's been in charge of government for 8 years, to say, yeah, you know, bureaucracy is bureaucracy. What are you going to do? And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, here's the thing, John. Government, the system we have, and you wrote the definitive book on the U.S. Constitution, so I know you know this. The government we have is hard to move. We moved a lot in the first 2 years when Obama was president. 2010 came along, and there was a huge tidal wave. And we've had a situation where you have a gridlock, not a gridlock, but a very divided Congress. And the system is devised in such a way that it makes it very difficult to get things done under that.
No question.
So that's, you know, yes, I would have liked if we had come to office and we didn't have a massive economic crisis and some of the other things. I would have liked to have concentrated on this project, which is how do you rationalize government for the 21st century? There are these projects going on within government, but it's very hard to turn it around.
Right.
So,
but all I'm saying is, if people can see your re-election effort be incredibly agile, and I mean, I'm still getting emails from the re-elect Barack Obama, like sometimes through like the television. Like I don't know how you guys figured it out, but if you're
laggard in your donations.
If you're that agile for campaigning, why are we so good at campaigns and so bad at governance?
Because campaigns are not as complicated and not as challenging as government because you have full control over your campaigns. Let me tell you something. When we made a decision in our campaign, I didn't have to go and have Congress affirm it. Okay,
right.
We could just move. And so
government
is not, campaigns are not government.
You can't do, in the way that you use executive action, you can't use that against the bureaucracy.
No, you can, and it has been done, and there's been in a series of different ways.
Are you happy with the amount that you guys did in that regard?
I am convinced that had there not been the resistance we had in Congress, we could have done more. There's no question about that. You know, am I happy
about it? So we agree?
Yes. we agree except for this one point, which is...
Yeah. By the way, this is how Jews make love. This is, just so you know, like, he and I, when we're done with this, this is like eating latkes on top of a dreidel with like...
We're missing... Where's the corned beef?
Jews, the only thing that's missing is an uncle who's to the right of Genghis Khan, who could just walk in and go, Israel has a right to defend itself! So I'm just pointing it out for those of you who are getting nervous. This is how we communicate.
We had a guy like that standing right here a few months ago, but no, I have to say...
I don't go to school here, so I don't know what that means.
No. It's too facile to compare campaigns to government.
The reason why I don't think it's facile is this. So, and again, I think it's very easy to say, well, it's two different systems. Well, we're at the point in our government where if you can take extraordinary measures to fix a crisis like the bank...
Joe Rogan with Sebastian.
Let's get something, you know, it just really taught me kind of how to, the only thing you have control of is how you perform and write. Anything else is up in the air.
That's very good advice because that is a lot of wasted energy that a lot of comedians have, worrying about other people's sets and worrying about other people's careers. Like, why is that guy getting this?
Yeah.
Or why is she on this fucking show? How come he got a thing or this and that?
Nothing to do with it.
We've all seen that, though. Those guys that get poisoned by other people's success, those guys, they always wind up failing, too. Like, it falls apart. Like, that's... Like, jealousy is a poison that only it does the opposite of what you want it to do. Instead of, like, when you're jealous about somebody else's career, it doesn't do anything bad to them, but it does something bad to you. Like, it poisons you.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, people that think, fuck that guy. He's got this fucking TV show. He's not even fucking funny. You know, I remember when he first started and I was fucking middling and he was an open micer. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's on TV now and you're here. Here's you.
Yeah.
When the guy says, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike Clusterfuck, and you go on stage, that's your time, dude. That's it. All that shit in between, like, you don't do that.
It's not good.
It's a waste.
It's not good. So
Dice gave me some good advice too. Dice is the reason why I started going on the road.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I was doing just the store. I would just do the store. And then somewhere in the 90s when I was on news radio, Dice goes, "You're a funny guy. You should do the road." And I go, "Yeah?" And he goes, "Yeah, you should do the road. Why don't you do the road?" And I go, "I don't know. I mean, I'm always working here." He goes, "Yeah, but you know what?" He goes, "You got TV shows." He goes, "You're on TV." He goes, "But what if that goes away?" He goes, "You don't want to fucking need those guys." He goes, "You could do great. You could have a great career on the road." And I remember thinking, like, he's fucking right. Like, what if TV shows go away?
Yeah.
Like, what if, news radio gets canceled and then I can't get another show and then I'm fucked? Like, I should go do the road. And I started doing the road because of Dice. 100% his advice.
Now, did you fall into news radio on like did you go audition for that part and get it? Or were
Yeah.
you, yeah?
I auditioned for it, yeah.
That was totally, you were just doing the audition game, you booked the show and then...
Well, I had a show
off to the
before
races?
that. It was a show that got canceled. It was called Hardball. That was on in 94, 93 or 94, and it didn't last. It only went like 6 episodes. I came out for that. But when I was an idiot, I was 25 or something, whatever the fuck I was, 26. And I thought, oh, this is definitely going to go. I'm going to get an apartment. So I leased an apartment, and then I'm stuck here. Once the show got canceled after 6 episodes, I was like, oh, great. Now I'm stuck here. And I didn't know what to do, and I was trying to figure it out. And I said, well, I guess I'll just stay for a while.
Yeah.
I was ready to go back to New York. I hated it out here. I hated working with actors. Like, I couldn't believe how pretentious they were and ridiculous and pampered. Like, working with actors was fucking mind-boggling to me. Because I was used to comics who, especially like East Coast comics, constantly busting each other's balls, always joking around. And there was like a camaraderie with comics. Like, we would go on the road together. Like, comics would give each other taglines. We'd always say, hey, that was a great set, this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And, there was like a feeling of like belonging.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was out here with these actors. I was like, oh, God, I can't even talk to these fucking people. They were all backstabby, and they were like, they would fuck with you before your scene and say creepy shit to you. And there was so much weirdness. There was just so much weirdness and fakeness. They would say things that they didn't really mean. They would love to say, like, they meet people, they had this fake way of talking, like, oh, nice to see you. Like, it was like, there was like this fucking, they would pretend to be this person who's like super professional so that they could get hired and do something else. Meanwhile, they were a boiling cauldron of crazy under the surface, just trying to keep it together until they fucking got into their car and just scream all the way home and then pop pills or do whatever the fuck they did. So I got another development deal. From the Hardball show, I got a development deal with NBC, and I was supposed to do my own show. And then they brought me in, and they said, we would like to talk to you about something. We got this other show that we're going to cast. We're replacing one of the characters. The original character was Ray Romano.
Is that right?
Yeah. Ray Romano was originally in the pilot, and then he got fired from the pilot, and they brought in a new guy to play the Ray Romano character in the pilot, and then they got rid of that guy. And so I felt better because I didn't replace Ray. I replaced the guy who replaced Ray. And then they had auditions, and I came in and I auditioned for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing how stuff happens.
Stupid, dumb luck.
Yeah.
Just dumb luck. I remember being at the audition. The first one was a cattle call. It was like fucking 100 dudes. And I was like, what are the odds of getting this? Jesus Christ, look at all these fucking people. I did the audition, and it was not funny at all. But they did it on purpose. They literally wrote a script that wasn't funny because they wanted to make sure people weren't like fucking hamming it up. They wanted to make sure that people didn't try super hard to make something funny. So then I got a callback, and I was like, really? I was like, okay. So I went in for the callback, and this time the script was hilarious. And I was like, oh, I see what they did. They weeded out all the hams. They weeded out all the huck. And I went to the script, and there was me and 2 or 3 other guys that looked like they were about to go to Nam. They were pale and sweaty and nervous and going over their lines. And I remember looking at these guys. I'm like, oh, I got this. So I plopped down on the couch while these guys were going over the lines. I put my fucking feet up. I put my hands behind my head. And I was like, look at you fucking pussies. You guys are scared. And because these guys were scared, I knew these were the only guys that were auditioning. I was super confident. So I went in there like super relaxed and I nailed it. And then I got it. But it was just looking at those guys. Looking at people that are scared can give you a lot of confidence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And especially if you hear it from the waiting room. If you hear somebody else's audition, you're like, that ain't even funny. That guy's not even funny in there.
Yeah, it was. They were just They were actors rather. They weren't comics. They didn't know how to. And the writing was really good. So I went from this show that was like the worst case show. It was a terrible show, the hardball show. It just wasn't good. They brought in this like really bad guy who was like an executive producer of Coach. Remember that show, Coach? And he was like hamming it up. Everything was just gross, shitty writing, real hacky premises, just garbage show. And then from that to working with Phil Hartman and Dave Foley and Stephen Root, I was like, Jesus Christ. Maura Tierney and Candy Alexander and Vicki Lewis. I was like, this is nuts. Just sitting at the fucking table with Phil Hartman, like reading with Phil Hartman. Like I'd only been doing stand-up for 5 years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm sitting next to Phil Hartman at this table.
It's crazy.
Reading for this sitcom. I'm like, this is madness. This doesn't even make sense. Yeah. Just dumb luck.
Wow.
But you know what? All that stuff was cool, but what was bigger to me was becoming a paid regular at the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing to me. It was like, having a sitcom, that's all well and good. But when I became a paid regular at the store, I was like, holy shit. I remember going back to my apartment. I had an apartment at the Oakwoods. You know, those little shitty pre-fucking furnished apartments. I used to go back to that shithole every night after I was a non-paid regular. These depressing, farted-in couches.
In Burbank?
Yeah. You know that off Olive?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I used to live.
Corey Haim died there.
No.
Yeah.
At the Oakwoods?
Oakwoods.
Really?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Doing drugs?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, I got there first. I got there before he died. Yeah. But once I became a paid regular at the store, that was everything to me. That was, I was in. I was like, you have like these little milestones.
Yeah.
Like like getting a record with Warner Brothers, that was a milestone. You have these little things where you're like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. I am actually doing this. Because for a while, you feel like a fraud. For the first few years of your career, you're out there you just feel like a fraud. And people want you to feel like a fraud too. Other comics want you to feel like a fraud. Like it's a lot of fucking crabs in a bucket going on in that business, especially early. A lot of you have crabs in a bucket. They just try to pull the other crabs down as they try to get out.
Yeah, that's why I just stayed. I had a job working at the Four Seasons Hotel while I was doing the stand-up, so I had kind of like a separate group of friends at my job. I didn't really hang out with a lot of comedians at night just because I was so involved at this Four Seasons during the day, and I was hanging out with them after work. And
Four Seasons out here?
Yeah.
Where's that at?
On Doheny and
okay.
Burton Way.
What'd you do over there?
I was in the Windows Lounge. I was a cocktail waitress, basically. I worked with about 10 girls and me and another guy.
Did you put the sock in?
Of course. That's how I got the job.
Oh, this fucking guy. Oh.
Yeah.
So how long did you do that for?
7.5 years.
Whoa.
I started in 98 and then I left in 2005.
Wow.
But yeah, that supplemented my income. I wasn't the road guy. I didn't really do a lot of feature work. I just kind of honed it in here in Los Angeles and worked at the Four Seasons in the meantime, just kind of hoping something would break, just doing the Comedy Store and just local sets. So
that's awesome. So where else did you besides the store?
Well, I went to the Laugh Factory, and Masada asked me, why are you angry? Why are you so angry? I go, what? Sam Kinison angry for a reason, but you. So
why was Sam Kinison angry for a reason?
I don't know. He said he had a reason to his anger, and my anger was displaced. So
well, you were mad at Ross, Dress for Less. I remember that bit. You get fucking so angry at the messy Ross.
That was my first introduction to L.A. I went to Ross Dress for Less with my father to buy bedding. He came out here to visit. He goes, "Come on, let's go to Ross. Get some pillows." And we walked in, we're like, what's going on here? Everything's on the floor. So
that was a good bit because it is true. Anybody's ever been there, but the bit they used to do, the way you would do it, like the people just take this and just start fucking throwing them.
Chuck it across the room. So we're coming from the northwest suburbs of Chicago, just very neatly put together stores. And now I went to the Ross on 3rd, and forget it. I mean, it's like a hodgepodge of stuff over there. There's like a bra mixed in with like games. So it was like, that's where that anger came from of like, God, I feel like a fish out of water. That's the whole thing. When I first came to LA, I didn't feel like I fit in. I feel like I was... I was the guy wearing the Cavariccis going to a nightclub that's 17 years old. So
I think the key is that everybody feels they don't fit in. Mm-hmm. Everybody does in the beginning. You can pretend, but you never. I mean, I feel like I fit in now.
Oh yeah,
it's a long time.
Yeah, it takes a while.
But in the beginning, I think everybody feels like they don't fit in. I think one of the great things is what you're doing. The Kill Tony. That gives people an introduction to stand up and an introduction to like you're in the big leagues like real quick, like you're on a podcast that gets seen by or listened to by hundreds of thousands of people, and you're there with Dom Irrera judging you and Tony Hinchcliffe and Sarah Silverman and all these different people that are really funny comedians are like watching you do stand up, putting you in these like super high pressure situations. You're doing 1 minute in front of a microphone, and then you kind of get to say hi to those people. They seem like normal.
I wish I had it when I was a kid, or when I started off, because that's so good for them because they can have it on tape. They can go over it. They can have like professional comedians like dissect what they're doing wrong instead of just like doing it in front of 2 other comics that didn't even pay attention, and you just go home and go, oh, I think I did okay.
Yeah, those are open mic nights where you're doing it. You're doing your act to a bunch of people who've seen your act, and they're comics. Yeah. You're like 10 people in the audience are all comics. Oh, yeah. Those are brutal.
Yeah,
it's almost like
half the shows are that, when you're an open mic. I mean, when I started, it was Chris D'Elia, Dean Del Rey, me, and we'd go to the same 4 different open mics every day. And it was just like, oh, you're my audience last, hour. It's the same audience over and over. It's just an audience of 5 other comics that went from one open mic to another.
Yeah, that's where some comics, they fall into that trap of doing stand-up for the back of the room. They do like really obscure shit that only the comics think is funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of practice in a way. It gives you a way to figure out a way to make something funny out of this moment. But it's not a real crowd. It's just you're kind of like fucking around.
It's easy to fall into that and never get out of that, too, for a while. I just had to make myself stop. Like, I'm done with this. I'm not going to Ha Ha Cafe anymore and spending $5 to go do 5 minutes. I'm like,
They charge you?
Yeah, a lot of places charge you. Ha Ha used to be $5, but you got a beer. And you got to do 5 minutes, and now you don't get a beer. You just, you just have to do $5, I guess.
Well, those clubs are barely hanging on. I mean, even the Ice House, which is like one of the best clubs in the world, they're kind of barely hanging on.
Yeah.
What do you got 2 phones over there for, you fuck?
I got the new Samsung Note 5, Joe.
Ooh, how is it?
By the way, one of the first phones that I've ever had that I'm almost done with the iPhone after this phone.
Really?
It's got one of the most amazing cameras. It's got all these really cool things. Look at this. Like if you're out and you're just like, oh, I need to write a note, you just take the pen out and you can be like, oh, you can just write it right here.
On the screen.
And then you could just be like, hey, I got to remember to eat this dick.
Oh, my God. That's always a problem.
Yeah.
Got to remember to eat that dick.
It's crazy good. I highly recommend this.
Really?
And it's got a feature in the camera where you can just broadcast right to YouTube. So kind of like Periscope. You could just be like, boom, I'm broadcasting now on YouTube.
What?
Yeah.
It's built into the camera?
Yeah. They've noticed how popular Periscope's been in live apps like that, so they've decided just to build it right into the operating system. So now you can just broadcast live from it.
Why is it better than the Edge?
Way better than the Edge. This is. I love this phone.
What's better about it?
The problem I had with the Edge is that while the Edge was neat to look at, the corners where it's wrapped around the side, I was constantly hitting buttons. It also had a really sharp edge to it, the feel of it, which this doesn't. This is more like an iPhone, so it's nice and soft on the side.
Let me check that out. Let me feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't beat the camera on the Samsungs.
It seems smaller than an iPhone, too.
It is smaller than an iPhone. It's thinner than an iPhone.
Ooh, it's a good size for your hand. My hands are pretty big.
Yeah.
But I can get this. I could do like a one-handed text with this, easy.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow, dude, this is pretty slick.
It also has the ability to edit PDFs. So if somebody sends you a PDF and is like, hey, I need you to print this out and sign it, now you can just edit it right on the fly, send it back.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I'm just amazed by the camera the most, though. It was the first time that Samsung or any Galaxy phone actually had a camera that's, I think, better than the iPhone camera.
Oh, yeah.
And what are you using for your provider?
T-Mobile.
And you like that?
I love T-Mobile. I'm on a family plan. Both of these phones, I have unlimited data. I think it's like $99 a month for both phones, unlimited data.
I'm looking through your Instagram. It's hilarious who you follow. Brian follows all girls that are sticking their asses out. It's just a slew of girls sticking their asses out. It's one after the other. All these different skanks. I say skanks with all due respect. With all due respect, a bunch of whores. A bunch of whores. Wow, you got a lot of hot girls you're following, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you single?
No, not anymore.
Oh, okay.
Got himself a girl. Well, he's not married.
Yeah, I'm not married, though.
That's the way to go. Even if you're not single, you're not married. That's the thing about this lady that's not marrying these gay people. She's doing them a favor. Like, don't do it. What are you doing? You got it made, you fucks. You got it made. It's right now. It's illegal. Well, now it is illegal. But for the longest time, it was illegal. And these guys had to go in there and fuck it up. I can understand lesbians wanting to get married. It's every girl's dream. But come on, these guys that are fighting for it, like, it's too hard. Just say you can't do it. Like, wow, it's like a marathon. I can't do it. I can't run it. Just say it. Say you don't have to do it. Just do it root style. Lay a broom on the ground, jump over it like Kizzy and Kunta Kinte did.
Joe, another cool thing about it, say like there's an interview of you and you're like, you know what, I want to save this interview. It's on a website right now or something like that.
Oh, yeah, you circle it.
Yeah, it used to be, take a screenshot or something. They have this new thing called screen capture where what you do is screen write. And so what it does is it takes a picture of it, then you can go advance it. So it will scroll down automatically, take a picture. So it'll go through the whole entire website, and now it just made it a huge JPEG. So you could have like a whole JPEG saved to your gallery. So it saves websites, and then you could like write on it and send it to people if you wanted to.
Is that how the fat Jewish steals all of his stuff?
Yeah.
Is that how he does
That's right.
Well, as soon as you took the pen out, it kind of lost me because it just seems like...
annoying?
Well, it's a lot going on, man.
There's a lot going on.
I mean, I'm not that tech savvy. You're doing pens.
Well, honestly, I always forget that there is a pen. I always
I
never take it
use
out.
the pen?
No, and the new one just clicks in there, so you don't. It just snaps in. So it's like.
Isn't there one that's waterproof though? Now they have a Sport.
They have the Samsung S6 Edge Sport or something like that, which is just built a little bit more tough and it's waterproof again. I asked about that, and he says, yeah, it's just a more rugged phone, but this is a little bit...
How's the battery life on that thing?
Great, and it's got the new fast charger. I have a charging pad now where I just go home and just set it on this table and then pick it up. So I don't have to plug it in anymore.
Now, do you have to put a special case on it to use that fast charge thing? Or
no, the new Samsungs are built into the phone, and you don't have to take off a normal case. So if you have a case on it, you don't have to take it off. It just goes through it. So you just sit it down on the table.
Are you a convert?
I'm just amazed at the knowledge of, like, when I listen to the sales guy tell me the options, I'm not even there. I'm just like, give me the phone, let me get out of here. You actually retain the information.
Yeah, so I love this shit.
Well, he goes online and he actually makes videos with these. For the longest time before Amazon fucked him, he used to have this great thing he was doing where he would buy something, like buy a camera, and then he would review it and then put up a link from his Amazon, so like if somebody bought it, he would get like a kickback.
Oh, wow.
So I'd get free stuff pretty much because I would just do such good reviews on these cameras that so many people would click on it, it would pay for the camera. So it was a way for me to get stuff that, like cameras and stuff I couldn't afford.
Wow. And how come they don't, why isn't that happening anymore? What happened there?
I don't know. They said that somebody reported me as saying that I had porn on my website, and so they go, oh, well, we can't have porn on the website. And then so they just took all... I was making I think up to $7,000 a month in just that Amazon stuff, and they just
you didn't really have porn on your website, did you?
No, it's just because it was Death Squad, and there was an episode that had a girl on it that was a porn star, and so they probably just went there. And
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Wow.
You were making like bank off of that shit.
Yeah.
You ever try to get back in?
I need to.
Come on, Amazon. Come on, Amazon. Look
Yeah.
it up. Look it up, you fucks. Now, didn't Apple come out with a bunch of new shit today?
Apple came out with a 12-inch iPad, so it's called an iPad Pro, which is it's just like a laptop, like a 12-inch laptop.
Thank you, folks, for listening. Tune in next week for more podcasts of all podcasts. Muddy Waters.
All right. Okay, we're gone. Roll it. Yeah, bring me champagne when I'm thirsty. Bring me a reefer when I want to get high. Yeah, bring me champagne when I'm thirsty. Bring me a reefer when I want to get high. Well, you know when I'm lonely, bring my woman, settle right down here by my side. Well, you know it shouldn't be no law. It's people that want to smoke a little dope. Well, you know it shouldn't be no law. It's people that want to smoke a little dope. Well, you know it's good for your head, and it'll relax your body, don't you know? Every time I get high, I lay my head down in my baby's breath. Well, you know, I lay down and be quiet, trying to take my rest. Well, you know she just hug and kiss me. Said, mother, you're one man that I love to bear. Well, I'm gonna get high. I'm gonna get high just as he shows my name. Well, you know I'm gonna get so high this morning. It's going to be a crying shame. Well, you know I'm gonna stick with my reefer. I ain't gonna be messing around with no cocaine.